The morning light filtered through the leaves, reflecting a warm glow despite the chill. The landscape was slowly recovering from the devastating storm. But many of the houses in this small village had yet to be rebuilt. Cranes, trucks carrying materials, and workers were busy building a new home for Clara and her family, who had lost everything in the historic flood. Jeff Bezos stood in the role of a leader, directing each stage of the construction of the new house for Clara and her mother. He walked to each section of the project, conferring with engineers and builders, making sure everything was done correctly. Although he was always busy with his business and big projects, this time, Jeff really got involved in every detail of the project, from the design to the materials. A lead engineer on the project, named Mark, approached him when he saw Jeff inspecting a corner of the house. "I have to be honest, Jeff. The way you got involved in this project really surprised me. You're the founder of one of the world's largest charities, and yet here you are, directing every detail. I have to admit, I don't understand why you're doing this." But Jeff paused, looking at Mark with a calm gaze. He didn't rush to answer, but instead looked up at the house taking shape, then back at the engineer. "There's a reason," and Jeff said, his voice low and firm. "A reason I can't ignore." But Mark sensed something deep in Jeff's eyes. He wasn't like those leaders who just gave orders from afar. Jeff really cared about this work, and his attention to detail wasn't a formality. Mark decided not to ask any more questions, but stood quietly, waiting for the story. Jeff took a deep breath and began to recall that fateful day. A huge flood came without warning, like a wild beast invading. No one was prepared. The rains continued for 3 days, rolling up thick, heavy black clouds, causing the river that was once gentle beside the village to become furious. The water rose, roaring, swallowing the rickety wooden houses, the old dirt roads, and the lush green gardens that were full of life just yesterday. In just one night, the whole village seemed to be submerged in a sea of water, the roof submerged in cold water. No one could have imagined that a natural disaster could be so devastating. This village, nestled beside a small river, was originally a peaceful place, where people made a living by farming, raising livestock, and fishing. Every day, they still lived like that, sharing joys and sorrows together in a close-knit community. But now, everything has changed. Huge waves crashed onto the shore, sweeping away rocks, trees, and everything in between from a life that had become a memory. While people were still struggling to find ways to protect themselves from the raging waves, news of the Great Flood quickly spread. Relief agencies everywhere began to deploy their forces, but no one could have imagined the devastation that nature had left behind. Amidst the terrible storms and the despair of the people, a man with a compassionate heart decided to leave his busy life to go directly to those in need. Jeff Bezos, a famous investor and founder of a large charity, heard about the flood from the first reports. Despite his busy work and tight schedule, Jeff did not hesitate. He understood that in times of crisis like this, nothing is more important than the presence of people who can do something truly useful. When he arrived at the small village, the first image he saw was a scene of devastation that could not be described in words. Roofs were completely destroyed, and the river was still rising, surrounding the houses that were deeply submerged. People flocked to higher ground, where they could avoid the risk of being swept away by the floodwaters. A feeling of sadness, but also of determination, rose in Jeff's heart. He knew that more than a few supplies would be enough. It would take a complete change, a timely rescue to get people back on their feet and moving on. Jeff did not come alone this time. He brought with him a team of charity workers, volunteers from all over the world. and tons of relief supplies. The charity's trucks rolled through the night to reach the devastated area. Boxes of food, medicine, water, and other relief supplies were distributed to the families most in need. Volunteers quickly helped stabilize people, providing emergency shelter and medical care for the injured. The sun was starting to set when Jeff Bezos reached the riverbank, where the waves gently lapped against the land. The land had changed forever. After the flood, Jeff stepped out of the relief truck, feeling the pain in the air. As he walked along the riverbank, his eyes caught sight of an old boat swaying on the water. A woman was sitting on it, her face sad, her eyes staring blankly into the distance. 3 children sat beside her, silent. All were soaked, their faces haggard, as if they had been through a long battle with nature. Their boat seemed to be the only thing they had left in this life. Jeff stopped, feeling a strong urge in his heart, unable to resist. "Hello," Jeff said, his voice warm, but somehow strange as he was directly exposed to such pain for the first time. "Do you need any help?" The woman on the boat raised her head, her eyes filled with anxiety and despair. Jeff could feel the strength in her eyes, but at the same time, he also saw extreme fatigue, as if this woman had been burdened with too much pain and could not find a way out. It was Clara, the one he would never forget. Clara stood up, her legs weak but still strong. She looked at Jeff, her eyes both wary and hesitant, as if she didn't know what to say. After a moment, Clara said softly, "Thank you, but we have nothing to give in return. All we have is this boat and the children." Jeff looked at the children sitting silently beside him, perhaps too young to fully understand the tragic situation around them. But it was clear that Clara was struggling not only with her own pain, but also with her responsibility as a mother, caring for 3 children in this situation. "There's no need to worry about paying you back," Jeff replied, his voice soft, trying to ease the worry in Clara's eyes. "I'm here to help you. Your situation is pitiful, but I believe we can do something." Clara looked at him, then at the 3 children. The mother said nothing more, just reached up to wipe away the tears that rolled down her cheeks. "Our house was washed away," she began, her voice quiet. "We have nowhere to go. All we have left is this boat. It's not much, but at least it keeps us alive." Clara's story was like a sharp knife, cutting straight into Jeff's heart. It wasn't just the material loss, but what a mother must bear when her children have no place to stay. Jeff's eyes were sad, and a feeling of sorrow suddenly rose in his heart that he had never experienced before. "We lived in a small village, just a few simple houses. But when the flood came, everything was gone. People told us to seek shelter, but I couldn't let the children suffer anymore. They had lost so much already," Clara said, her voice echoing in an endless narrative. She paused, as if searching for the strength to continue. "My husband, he didn't make it. The flood took him away, and there was nothing I could do to save him. I don't know what to do, you know." Jeff looked at Clara. Her eyes were blurred with tears, but there was a strange light in them, a resilience, a determination to survive no matter how cruel life could be. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Jeff said, his voice shaking. But he tried to keep his emotions in check. "We'll help you. I'll contact charities to find shelter for you." Clara looked at him, but the doubt in her eyes did not completely disappear. "But can we go back?" she asked. "Our village has been wiped out. Everything has changed so much." Jeff was speechless. He knew that, no matter how much help he gave, Clara's family's life would never be the same again. But he also understood that, in dark times like these, hope was the most important thing. "It's not that we're going to bring back what was lost," Jeff replied, his voice firmer. but we're going to help you start over, and your children deserve a home, a chance at a better life." But after a few seconds of silence, Clara looked at him, then at her 3 children. "I don't know how to thank you," and she said, her voice trembling, "but I won't forget what you did." Jeff smiled, a gentle, comforting smile. "No need to thank me. It's what I need to do. That's why I'm here." And from there, the decision to help Clara's family was made. Jeff not only committed to providing food and water for the family, but he also proactively contacted charities to find temporary shelter for them, as well as to ensure that Clara's family would not have to live in these old boats for much longer. The heartache and shock of seeing Clara and her children living in such terrible conditions motivated Jeff to do something bigger. Not just short-term relief, but a long-term solution. And that decision was to build a new home for this family, a place where they could start over, where they could have hope for a better life. As soon as Jeff left Clara's boat, he knew he had to act quickly. The flood had been devastating, and many families had lost not only their possessions, but also their safe shelter. They could no longer continue living in old boats, makeshift huts, or under the rain. The first thing Jeff did was contact the major relief organizations he had worked with before to request immediate help for Clara's family. After notifying the relief team, Jeff returned to the riverbank, where Clara was still sitting with the 3 children. They had received a small amount of food and water from the relief team, but Clara looked at the food packages with a distant look in her eyes. She felt grateful, but the pain of loss was still there. While the children eagerly looked at the food packages, Clara sat silently, her eyes looking into the distance as if searching for something unreachable. "Clara," and Jeff said as he approached, "I've contacted a few relief organizations. They'll help you find temporary shelter immediately. I've sent out an emergency request to get you into a safe area." Clara raised her head, her eyes shining with a faint hope. "So we'll have a roof over our heads?" she asked, not daring to believe what Jeff had just said. She didn't know if she could trust any promises anymore, but Jeff's deep, reassuring voice gave her a glimmer of hope. "That's right, Clara. I won't let you live like this. The relief team will get you to a safe, temporary shelter where you can rest, take care of your children, and regain your strength." And Jeff said, his voice firm but sympathetic. Clara looked at Jeff, her heart breaking. Even if it was only temporary, at least there was hope. Clara tried to smile, but tears still fell. She had little faith in the world around her. But Jeff was an exception. She felt a warmth in her heart as she looked into his steadfast eyes. "Thank you, Jeff. I don't know what to say," Clara said, choking up. Jeff just looked at her silently, not needing more words. He knew that no words could ease the pain she was feeling. What mattered now was not words, but actions, and he had pledged to do his best to help. After negotiating with the relief organizations, a large relief vehicle arrived at the riverbank, ready to take Clara's family to a safe shelter. Clara and her children were loaded into the vehicle, and Jeff sat beside them, assuring them that everything would go smoothly. Clara felt safe for the first time in days of anxiety and fear. The car started to roll away from the land that used to be their home. Clara didn't say much during the trip. She just stared silently out the window, her eyes on the land that used to be their village, now only ruins and traces of natural disasters. The 3 children slept soundly in her arms, exhausted from the long, stressful days. Clara sighed, her heart pounding as she thought about the future. She didn't know where she could start again, but at least she had a chance to do it again. When they reached the temporary camp, Jeff led Clara and the children to the area assigned to them. The tents were makeshift, but they were still enough for her family to live and rest. Clara didn't know how to thank Jeff. She just sat down with the children, fed them, and tried to calm them down. "Thank you, Jeff," and Clara said, her eyes red. "I don't know what I would do without you." Jeff sat down next to her, patting Clara on the shoulder. "Don't worry, this is just the first step. I'll do everything I can to help your family find a new home. But for now, let's get you settled." Clara looked at him, feeling a strange power in her heart. She saw more than just the help in the form of food and water packages. She also felt Jeff's heart. He had done more than that. He had not only saved her, but had given her and her children a chance, a ray of light in the darkness. After Clara's family was settled in the shelter, Jeff continued his work. He called in a team of engineers and experts to begin the project of building a house for Clara's family. Jeff decided that, in addition to providing short-term relief, he would fund a real home for them, a place where they could rebuild their lives from scratch. While Clara rested, Jeff continued to work, contacting partners, contractors, and social organizations. He was in no hurry, but he knew that every action he took would change the life of a family. A roof is not just a physical shelter, but also a symbol of a new beginning. And that is what Jeff wanted to give Clara's family: a chance to live, love, and hope again. Over the next few weeks, Jeff continued to oversee the project, not just as an investor, but as a protector, a companion. He not only wanted to help Clara, but also wanted to give others hope, to show them that the world had not abandoned them. Every time he met Clara and her children, the weak smiles gradually became brighter. They began to feel the change, not only in their living conditions, but also in their spiritual life. Clara could feel the peace in her heart when thinking about the future. She believed that, although life had taken everything away, there were still precious things, and Jeff's help was part of that. The day Clara's family's house was completed, the peaceful little area by the riverbank became a completely different place. The newly built walls not only blocked the wind and rain, but also contained the hopes that were nurtured by the hearts of those who had helped them. Clara could not believe her eyes when she stood in front of the new house, a real house, a warm home for her and her children, where there was no more worry about the rain and storms. A home was not only a place of refuge, but also a place where she could start over to heal the wounds that life had caused. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt like she could breathe a sigh of relief. Her children no longer had to grow up in a dilapidated boat or live out their days in makeshift huts. They had a clean, solid home where they could play, learn, and dream about the future. On the last day of the project, Jeff arrived at Clara's new home. He stood outside, gazing at the house with wide eyes. The shiny windows reflected the afternoon sun, and the new wooden front door felt sturdy and safe. Clara stood beside him, her hand clasped with her youngest child's, her eyes red with tears of joy. "Thank you, Jeff. I can't express how I feel right now. This is the best thing that has ever happened to me," Clara said, her voice choked with emotion. Jeff smiled, his eyes warm. "Clara, I am just a part of this process. You guys deserve the credit. You guys are the ones who have fought tirelessly, even in the face of unimaginable challenges. This house is just the first step, but I believe your family will go further." Clara looked at him, and a feeling of gratitude welled up inside her. But she was grateful not only for the house, but for what Jeff had given her and her children. He had not only saved her financially, but also given her a belief in life. Clara remembered those early days when she sat on the boat, her eyes empty and her soul filled with fear. It was Jeff who came and changed everything. Jeff, you don't know, back then, I thought I would never make it. But today, looking at this house, I realize that maybe we can find it all again. Find hope again. Find ourselves again. But Jeff listened, and a gentle sense of pride spread through him. Although he never expected praise, looking at Clara and her family, he knew he had done the right thing. This is just the beginning, Clara, and Jeff said, his voice soft but determined. Things have changed, but life still has many challenges ahead. Always remember that even in the most difficult moments, you can still rise. You are not alone. But Clara felt the determination in Jeff's words, and it gave her strength. Facing difficulties in the future, she no longer felt helpless. Looking at the new house, she realized that nothing is impossible if you have enough faith and determination. A week after Clara's family moved into the new house, Jeff returned to visit them. He walked into the living room, where Clara was sitting with her children. A cozy and lively space, simple but meaningful objects, such as the new wooden table and soft upholstered chairs, created a comfortable space. "Good morning, Clara," Jeff smiled, seeing the scene in the new house. Clara stood up, reaching out to shake his hand. "Hello, Jeff. We're fine. My children are studying, and I've started gardening." Jeff looked around, a sense of satisfaction evident on his face. She was trying to make a new life for herself, and that was what he wanted to see most. "That's wonderful, Clara. You've started a new chapter," Jeff said. "But I want you to remember one thing. This house isn't just a place to find safety, it's a place to find strength. You can start here and go further, not just for the kids, but for yourself." But Clara looked at Jeff, a small smile on her face. "I won't forget, Jeff. I'll teach my kids that no matter how hard life gets, we can still get up, fight, and keep going." But at the end of that morning, Jeff left Clara's house, taking one last look at the house before turning around and driving away. He felt a gentle happiness spread through him. Not just the happiness of seeing a more stable family, but the happiness of knowing that what he had done had not only changed circumstances, but also people. Clara didn't just get a home. She got the motivation to reinvent herself. For Jeff, this is the greatest reward he could ever receive. Seeing the people he helped not only survive, but grow stronger, move forward, and build their own futures.